We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's Shoot the Sheev podcast, we are covering Season 2 of Rebels. I have seen Season 2, but I watched it like one time, and I don't remember... I remember the beginning and the end, but nothing in between, until I started to see some of the episodes as we watched it. Some that I thought were good, some that I thought were not so good. It was Sarah's first time watching Rebels Season 2. We're going to get into just some overall discussion about the show. Then we'll talk about some things we didn't like, some things we did like, and then wrap it all in the end. So I guess just some things to talk about the show in general. One of the really cool things about this show is that James Earl Jones actually voices Darth Vader in the show. I remember when this season was premiering, like that was the main advertisement everywhere. Like, returning James Earl Jones. And then they would, show Vader in Rebels form. And so that was probably one of the coolest parts about Rebels Season 2 and seeing Vader in animated form was that we got, the legit Vader. We didn't have to use like the voice actors they used for video games and stuff like that. We just got the man himself, and that was amazing. Some other interesting things about the show, we start to bring in the clones a little bit. We have to figure out a way to get Captain Rex involved because the end of Season 1, we got Ahsoka involved with our group. So our group is starting to become more and more involved with the rebellion. They really kind of want to stick with their own business, but they keep growing more and more as a part of the rebellion. And then somewhere a little bit along the way, we get some backstories for Zeb. We get a little bit of a highlight for Chopper at one point, and we get a highlight for Sabine and Hera and Ezra, and we get bits and pieces of Kanan along the way. I wouldn't say there was a dedicated portion to Kanan as opposed to the others, at least not that I can remember. But there was some talk of stuff about him.
They have some really brief mentions. It's really more or less when he's trying to relate to the other characters. It's okay that you lost your parents. Not it's okay, but I can relate to you because you lost your parents, and I don't have really any parents, so I can kind of relate in that form. But he doesn't have a dedicated backstory that they deep dive into. We don't visit any members of his family or any friends of his past or any prior people that he had relationships to like we have with the other characters.
Yeah, I think a lot of it also, in addition to what you said, when he's bickering with the clones because he has kind of some trust issues with clones, he starts talking about his previous encounters with clones and his time with his master and stuff like that. But like we said, there wasn't a main focus for Kanan. It was just kind of sprinkled in along the way. And then, let's see, eventually we get to a point where we have to go, I forget what it's called already, the planet name. But they go to an old Sith temple, which is towards the end of this season. We see this dude that calls himself the Old Master, which turns out to be Darth Maul, which is really cool. And then we get a very, very epic ending between Darth Maul, our heroes that are Jedi, the Inquisitors, and then Darth Vader, the man himself.
One thing that's kind of interesting that I just thought of is in terms of meeting side characters that are related to our main characters, such as when we meet Hera's dad and when we meet Sabine's friend, I don't remember her name. But then also kind of when we meet Hondo for the second time.
Oh yeah,
Not that
Hondo.
Is Hondo's not like part of Ezra's backstory, but it's somebody who, you know, he kind of comes back to later. So it's, a past friend, I guess, if you will, even though he's a more recent friend than, say, Hera's dad, obviously, because she's had that relationship her whole life. But one thing that I've noticed with each of those is that it's somebody that they thought that they trusted at one point, and then they kind of turned to sabotage them, and then they became friends again. So like with Hera's dad, for example, she loved her dad as a kid. They kind of grew apart, thought that she could trust him, but was kind of weary. He double crossed her, and then they wound up teaming up in the end. Sabine's friend, they were friends once before. They separated and, were kind of at each other's throats trying to get whatever intel or that not R2 unit, but the droid that they were both after, they wound up having to work together and they were kind of friends in the end. And somewhat similar for Hondo, although Hondo's just kind of your typical scoundrel if he's in it for himself, whatever's can get him the best deal. Uh, they kind of like to use that formula a little bit there, don't you think?
Yeah, like the more you're talking about it, I was like, maybe there is a small formula to a handful of these things. Um, there's actually something else that we can kind of talk about too. And I was waiting to see if you were gonna have some sort of reaction to this when we were watching. I get that luxury where I've seen and heard about all these things, and I'm just like, ooh, this is coming up. How is Sarah gonna react? Um, the part where Ahsoka, we're not necessarily talking about our likes and dislikes. We're just talking about plot points right now. The part where Ahsoka cuts Vader's helmet and we see Anakin's face. You've seen that happen in another instance, right?
Oh yeah, and Mando. Or not Mando, oh my goodness, the Obi-Wan show.
Right. And so, um, when you saw that, how did that kind of feel? Because well, this is going to be kind of a interesting segment. How Let's talk about how we felt when we saw the Kenobi show. Okay. So when you saw that type of thing happen in Kenobi, what did you think about the moment? Did you think like it was cool? Did you think it was weird, dumb? What did you think when you first saw it with Kenobi?
When I first saw that happen in Kenobi, where Kenobi or Obi-Wan Kenobi slashes open Vader's helmet, it was kind of one of those things of like almost like taboo, like, oh my gosh, she just cut his helmet, like his helmet's supposed to cover his face, and now you can see his face. Like you're not supposed to be able to see his face. What the heck? And so there's a lot more shock and kind of surprise to it when I saw it for the first time in the Kenobi show because I hadn't seen it in the in the Rebels show prior. Um, Watching it for the second time, if you will, when I'm watching it during the Rebels show, even though this happened prior, I just hadn't seen this show yet when I watched Kenobi. The shock wasn't necessarily there. I was surprised to see it happen again, but this isn't the first time that I've seen something in this show that I've seen in another show that's like from the 2022 era, I'm gonna say, in terms of TV shows. Um, there's other things that have happened, like in the Bad Batch, that I've seen happen in this show. And so it's hard for me to not feel like this show is ripping off of those shows, even though I know this show came first, if that makes sense. So
That's
I'm
kind
more like just
that's
trying
kind
to juggle all those feelings and not trying to rip off of this show because I know that this show came out before those shows.
Right. That's kind of what I was leading towards. If there's something you guys don't know about Sarah, she absolutely hates covers. So, like when a band plays a song by somebody else, and they try to do it their own. Sarah is very much I saw it here. This is the original to me, and so I kind of wondered what that dynamic would have been, knowing like this kind of weird tweak maybe in the brain thinking like this actually came first, but I experienced it here first. Like, how does that line up, kind of a thing, you know?
Well, music is different than TV because there's more elements since you can see and hear. And it's not a direct copy paste because the scenarios are a little bit different.
Well,
And
to be fair, this is very, very nitpicky. This was the other side of the helmet. So when Ahsoka did it, she did it on uh
Vader's right.
Vader's right side, and when Kenobi did it, it was on Vader's left side.
But you know what? At least to me, the sound of him wheezing sounded the same.
Hmm.
So that sound being identical was I don't know if it really was, but Jeremy is very much one to pick out little sounds and snippets that have been reused throughout the shows. Like, oh, did you hear that TIE fighter? That's the sound of a TIE fighter from episode 4, or stuff like that. So I don't know if it's true or not, but to me, I almost felt kind of proud because I thought that sounds like the same kind of like wheezing sound or like machinery breathing sound as when it happened in the Kenobi show. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounded the same to me. So yeah.
Yeah, whenever Vader gets messed up, he makes the wheezing sound. Um, I would say because the show Rebels is like held at a very, very high standard for a lot of people. Like this is a Star Wars animation is known to be amazing.
It
And
has a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes.
well, there you go. But I will say, I believe this moment in Kenobi was way more emotional than um it was in Rebels. And I think it's almost unfair to be able to say that because Kenobi was able to see an instance and then try to improve on it, kind of a thing. Whereas this was the first time it was done when it was done. Uh, because they both have emotional connections. Anakin was Ahsoka's mentor in the Clone Wars, and so they have that little dynamic happening when they see each other face to face for the first time in whatever many years it was. And then in the Kenobi show, it was the same thing. That was the first time that Obi-Wan saw his apprentice in, I think they said like 10 years or whatever it was between.
That was the other thing I was trying to figure out when she cut his helmet is I was trying to see how old he was or like how old he looked and any kind of analyzing of his face that I possibly could do to internalize his age during this.
Well, it's after Kenobi. I can tell you that. And the reason why we can make that, I figured it out while we were watching the latest episode. And it's because Maul kills the fifth brother. And the fifth brother is in Kenobi. So therefore, this has to be after Kenobi. So that's just kind of the connection I made. But we've also seen in Star Wars, no one's ever really gone. So who knows how that's all going to pan out down the road. So we covered a little bit about just what the show is in general, some major plot points that we're probably going to reference as we go along here. But when we come back, we're going to talk about some of our tough loves for season 2 of Rebels. So stick around. Have you seen The Mandalorian? Do you wonder what Operation Cinder was that they mentioned in this show? Well, we got you covered because we have an entire playlist dedicated to the Star Wars Battlefront 2 campaign, which highlights Operation Cinder. So if you check out our playlist, you'll be able to see what actually happened with Operation Cinder and know what they're talking about with the show. Now back to ours. Welcome back, everybody. We are here to talk about some tough loves for Star Wars Rebels Season 2. I'll go ahead and I'll just kick it off with this season is longer. This isn't my issue. This season is longer than Season 1. I think Season 1 was like 15 episodes, and this one was 22. So there's a little bit more filler in here, I think, than I was used to from Season 1. I really didn't like how they reintroduced the clones. I thought like that was the episode that once I realized what it was on that I saw before, I was like, I remember not liking this story arc before. I'm not gonna like it here, so let's just get through this 40 minutes because it's a two-parter, and then we can get on our way. So there was some story arcs in here that just weren't really my favorite. That one is probably number one because that's the one that I can pick out right away that I didn't really care for.
Did you feel that way when we saw them in the Bad Batch? Because I'm fairly certain it's the Bad Batch. I think it was. I'm fairly certain they had a nearly identical episode where they met this group and one of the people of the group, one of the clones, wasn't as friendly and kind of tried to betray them and then had to double back on their word to try to make it up to the Bad Batch.
Yeah, I feel like I remember something similar to that. So, the fact that they're kind of reused, that's one thing is, again, I know this came first and the Bad Batch came later, and they're basically reusing some storylines and arcs. But, if I didn't like it in the first place, I ain't gonna like it the next either. So, there was just some storylines that just really didn't hit for me. I kind of feel like this show, even though season 2 overall I thought was pretty good, I think if they would have tightened it up a little bit, made it like 20 or 18 episodes, that it might have been more quality over quantity, so to speak. I know season 3 is going to be 22 episodes and season 4 is going to be back to 15. So I'm kind of curious to see how that pans out with those as well. There's some things that happen throughout the season that I'm going to talk about in the good section that I like that was, fleshed out here. But one of my main things was some of that stuff felt a little bit more filler. There were some arcs that felt like they were kind of boring. And unfortunately, that clone episode happens in like episode 3 or 4 or something like that. So it's like right away. Um, the first 2 episodes are super engaging with Vader, and then we go into those episodes that I don't care about. And it's kind of like a pulling me out kind of a thing. Uh, what's one that you didn't like?
So not necessarily a story arc or a character arc, but more so a character's art style and portrayal in this particular series. Can you take a guess as to who I didn't like?
My guess is Maul.
Yoda.
Oh, that's right. You were
Yoda looked atrocious. Oh my gosh, he looked ridiculous.
Sarah kept complaining when she saw it. She's like, "What's wrong with Yoda?" And then
He looked like he was made out of modeling clay.
they would cut to a different scene, and then he'd come back on camera, and then be like, Sarah's surprised that he looks the way he looks again, and be like, "What is wrong with him?" Every time he came on screen.
It never got any better. It was just continuous disappointment.
Which one was better, this one or the one from The Last Jedi?
You know, you're referring to when he was like a hologram, a force
Force
ghost.
Ghost. Yeah.
I I want to say when he was like a Force ghost, because then at least he was more recognizable. I don't know. It's hard to say because they're different art styles, but in this one, he looked like a deformed piece of Play-Doh. It did not look the way that he was supposed to look. I know these characters aren't supposed to be like identical to live action because, it's a cartoon, it's animated, but he just looked weird. He was not
You
shaped right.
have you seen what he looks like in the Clone Wars?
I don't remember.
He looks more defined in the Clone Wars one. They gave him a little more justice. He doesn't just look like a blob. So
Looking
I
forward
thought
to
I thought you were gonna say Maul because he was very different than what we would expect him to be, but he kind of explains why he is the way he is in the show.
in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. Um, oh, I think I see what you're saying. I thought you were talking about like his alliance or his allegiance to being a Sith or not Sith because he said he wasn't, he said he was on his own, then he said Ezra was his apprentice, which would mean that he's trying to be Sith and like, he was doing Sith-like actions, but like trying to claim that he was neutral. That's what I thought you were trying to get at, and he was being kind of flaky or what's the word here? Shisty about his actual intentions, which is very Sith-like.
No, I just thought I I I had thought that maybe he would have been what you weren't expecting.
Mm.
And because he seems a bit different than, at least when I think of Darth Maul, I think of the dude that's running around Naboo trying to murder Jedi. And that was completely different in this aspect because his motives are different. So, and also I've seen the Clone Wars, so I know a handful of things that happened that you don't have the reference for. And so, but we are going to fill in those gaps, by the way. I think it's going to happen at this year because we're trying to watch like a season of a show per month. And we only got two more for Rebels, so that'll be July and we'll get through season 4, I think, at least of the Clone Wars. Maybe season 5 and season 6 will get done over the holiday break. We'll see.
Yeah.
But what I can say is the Clone Wars, the final season of the Clone Wars is very good. It is very good. So you have that to look forward to. I don't know what the final season of Rebels is going to be like because I haven't seen it.
Are we ever gonna see Hera actually wear her freaking goggles?
I think so. I think
Because
it's.
she's been wearing them goggles for 2 seasons now, and I haven't seen her put them on a single time.
I'm
It's getting a little
pretty.
bit annoying.
I'm pretty sure there's an instance. Let's see. Is there anything else that we have tough love for? I mean, this the show's great, so it's kind of hard to almost nitpick here.
I would disagree with you on the season being too long. I feel like we had such a hard time with Bad Batch, and I know I keep going to that one. It's because it's the most similar because it's the current animated series, right? Like in 2023, that is our current animated series. So that's the one that's the most recent. So that's why I keep comparing it to that. It's set in a similar time. Um, and it's got kind of a similar show setup. It's a group of people or clones in that instance who aren't necessarily with the rebels, but aren't with the Sith either, and just trying to make their way and figure out how to get from, how to find a means of living, right? And so they're similar groups. It's kind of similar shows. And with Bad Batch, we were always so disappointed in how short the seasons were because there was so much filler and not enough substance. And we wanted the shows to be longer because then we wouldn't mind the filler so much. And now here you are, and the show is longer, and you're like, I don't like the filler. There's still too much filler.
Well, with the bad, so here's the thing though, and this is gonna kind of almost be partially things that that I like about the show. This show gives us more episodes that are important to story element than the Bad Batch. I feel like the Bad Batch gives you like one or two in the beginning, one or two in the middle, and one or two at the end, and everything else is pretty much filler. Whereas this one, we get like multiple episode arcs throughout, um, which I do like because a good handful of those explore the backstories of our characters. But there's some, I guess I guess I don't necessarily mean that. I know I talked about the 22 shortening it down, but maybe more what I'm looking for is uh just a better story to bring people in because like I
It,
said,
it, it's fine to say the one episode was boring. I was just picking on you because you said you wanted it shorter.
I think they are they have their weaknesses are from different points of view. Like with the Bad Batch, we don't get very many episodes, but we get a ton of filler episodes and nothing like the. I've said this before and I'll say it again. When I read Star Wars books, if I don't get some sort of substance where it is going to enhance my understanding of something in Star Wars, I'm going to consider it a waste of time. And that's the same thing with the shows. If I don't get something out of this show that, adds either something cool, something interesting, something thought provoking that comes out of the show, if I don't get any of that, I'm going to consider it a waste of time. And because there's so many episodes in the Bad Batch that I think follow that, where it's like this show would have accomplished the same thing without that episode, and we say that about multiple episodes, that's the problem. Whereas in this show, we get like 22 episodes, and there's a good chunk of those that are being used appropriately. There's just a handful of them that seem kind of boring, which is expected from a show. You're not expected to like every single episode, but I had to find something I didn't like. And like when we talked about the clone arc, as soon as I saw what it was, I was like, I'm gonna be strapped in for the next 40 minutes. I'm not gonna like it, and I'm just gonna have to deal with it. So if an episode gives me that kind of vibe, of course I'm gonna want to change something else to bring them in. But yeah.
That's fair.
Oh,
I'm not saying that was like the most thrilling episode either. Another episode that you could say was kind of filler was the one of Chopper trying to get his leg, this extra leg that he saw that would have replaced his current leg so that he had a matching set. It was cute and it had some fun moments, and he was able to kind of help um, liberate a new droid and stuff so that he could join the group. And we saw him at least in one other episode after that. Was it necessary and did it really help anything? No, not really. It didn't really add anything to the actual story, so I could see that being an episode that wasn't entirely necessary. And if I was watching this show week to week and not just binging it over, a week or two, that would be a week that I would probably be disappointed and not as thrilled as some of the other more engaging episodes.
so a couple of things with what you just said. The first thing I want to say is this was actually one of the episodes that I thought um like got a passing grade from me per se, because like how are you gonna give um Chopper a backstory, right? We got all these other characters that are getting some pretty decent plot lines of their backstory. The one thing that I did not realize this about Chopper until we watched the episode was that his leg was wrong. And so that gives you a more build up on his character of like, he might be a droid that's full of mixed match parts, which tells you a little bit about his past. And I thought that was kind of their little cute way of showing that about Chopper. So I actually kind of like that one. The second thing I wanted to say about what you brought up was when you said binging it straight through or waiting week to week, that has been like the determining factor for a lot of Star Wars projects, and it's really unfortunate. It's sad that Star Wars can't sustain itself week to week, but when you watch it all the way through, then we finally appreciate something with it. Um, that's why I think whenever they're like with Ahsoka, the new show coming out, something tells me that it will be able to hold its own. I think it's in very good hands. It looks really cool. Um,
The
but I
first season of Mando was able to hold its own.
it did. It did. It just makes me wonder what the reaction of audiences would have been if it was released all at once. Would it would Boba have been so poorly received? Would Kenobi, like we've said here on this channel, at least I have, that I like Boba more watching it all the way through, and I like Kenobi more watching it all the way through. Kenobi like rose to the top of my ranks for last year's shows after I watched it all the way through. So, and Boba wasn't my favorite, but it helped me appreciate it more, being able to watch it all the way through. Because then I didn't have to, when we were watching Boba week to week, we were like, okay, we're kind of iffy on this whole back and forth with flashbacks. I want to know what's happening now, but we're seeing everything from the past. Whereas if we got to see that straight through, we could have basically been rest assured, oh, we're going to get there eventually, but maybe we can appreciate what's happening in the past right now instead of having to worry about so much of when are we going to get past this crap, you know? um, yeah, that's all I have to say about all that. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the things we really liked, so stick around. Have you ever wondered what Amazon coffins are and what they're full of? Well, we got you covered here on the channel. Check out our playlist of our Amazon coffin unboxings where Sarah and I open up boxes that have Amazon returns and we share with all of you what we get in each of those boxes. If you ever wanted to get into liquidation and want to know what types of things you can find, check us out. Now back to our show. Welcome back, everybody. We are here with things that we really liked about this show. And this, in my opinion, is going to be a very easy segment because there's a good handful of things I liked for this season of Rebels. The first thing I'll go ahead and kick it off with is we got a lot of character development in season 2. I felt like season 1, we kind of had to set up the show, and so we didn't get all those highlights for everybody. Not as much as we really could have gotten, so to speak. But here in season 2, we got a backstory, at least pieces of backstory for Ezra. We learned about his parents. We saw some for Zeb. We saw some people from his home planet and learned about him. We had some for Sabine. We saw her friend and learned about, when she was a Mandalorian. We learned about Hera.
Not only her friend, but also when they went to visit that planet to see the other Mandalorians. Not that she was friends with them, but calling them out to a duel by combat and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Showed some more of her backstory character and who she was.
Right. Hera and her dad. So we got to see some of that. And we didn't get a whole lot about Kanan, but like we said earlier on, we got some sprinkled things in here and there. I don't really think we needed maybe so much from Kanan. Keep somebody a mystery, he might be one that we learn more about in season 3. But we also
more on Hera before you jump too far to the next person was when she was trying to convince that one guy if she could use their ship. And so she was explaining why she became a pilot and whatnot.
Which guy?
Ooh, I don't remember his name. But it was when she got that one extra powerful ship that That way she could
Oh,
launch
the
launch missiles and stuff.
Calamarian dude.
Yeah.
She got the bomber
Yep.
or the B-wing, not the bomber.
Yep.
Yep. And then we got that small little substance from Chopper as well, which honestly he could have been very easily left on the chopping block because he's a droid. But oh, Chopper is amazing in this show. It is so cool that they basically made a droid where he's not talking English, but he's talking in cadence so that we can pick up what he's saying, which is
At least
hilarious.
sometimes. I wish
Yeah,
I understood it more often, but when I do, it's really cool.
I'd say a good 60 to 70% of the time we can pick up what he's saying, especially based off other people's reactions. Um, like, what the heck being, mm-hmm, you know? Uh,
I feel like it's more like 30% of the time, but okay.
oh, well, that's the difference between you and I suppose.
I guess you just know how to speak droid.
I do. Apparently, I do. So yeah, I really enjoyed Chopper in season 2. I enjoyed the backstories, but I don't want to take up everything. What's something that you liked?
I liked Ezra's character development a lot. There's a good handful of things I want to talk about, but this is one for sure that I want to touch on. His uh, you know, from how he's dealing with the loss of his parents to how he's dealing with, such intense training, both from Jedi training, then there was blaster training, then there's training on how to be a crew member of the ship. And it's a lot. And it's a lot of pressure on him. And anytime you put that much pressure on somebody, it's kind of, this is going to sound a little sick, but it's kind of interesting to see how they handle it all, right? And to see his conflictions of how to see the good in people, like when he was trying to work with Darth Maul without knowing it was Darth Maul, and how he handled that, and that he kind of got bamboozled a bit, and not everything always goes his way, but he's trying to do the best he can, and I just think he's a very interesting character to watch, and I enjoy that a lot.
Yeah, and we also have to keep in mind he's like a high school kid basically, and so that's a very impressionable moment in people's lives at that age. When you're trying to identify as an adult, he's always challenging Kanan about being right and whatnot. I think they said something in here like he said to Kanan, "You always change the subject when you know I'm right," kind of a thing. So we have him going through adolescence and dealing with the challenges along the way. So it's a cool thing to be able to see, especially since when we see Anakin, arguably the most important Jedi of all in the movies, we actually miss those years. We don't get to see how he dealt with things at that age. Whereas here we actually get to see someone of that age. And arguably, Ezra is very similar to Anakin in the idea of he didn't start training until much late into his life. Typically the Jedi Order would try to get kids when they're super young, and I mean super, like 5, 6 years old. And here's Ezra, maybe like, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 when they find him. So similar to Anakin, he's going to have those internal struggles, and he's not going to basically be nurtured into being a Jedi from a very young age. He's going to have to do it as an adult where he has perspectives that are much different than what the Jedi would want him to have when starting training. So, yeah, it's been very cool seeing how he's handling that and where he's going to grow into next. I think season 3 is going to be very interesting. I know the premise, but I don't know everything about it. So I'm very curious to see how that goes.
That's the season you've seen part of, but not all of, correct?
Correct.
Ooh, it'll be neat having us actually watch some of it together for the first time together, because so far I haven't seen this stuff, but you have.
Yeah.
So that'll be
All of season 4 I have not seen, so that'll be purely new as well.
So excited.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. There's one major plot point that I know about in season three, and it was like if you're as much of a Star Wars nerd as I am, it's very hard to not catch wind of it. And so I watched that one little like 5 or 10 minute segment. Um, but it'll be very interesting again to see like how you react to this cool moment that's going to be coming. Oh, what else do we like? I really liked Darth Vader in this season. He it's he doesn't like overstay his welcome. He doesn't stick around super long in the series. I feel like Vader appears in the first couple episodes, like two, maybe three throughout the season, and then he's back at the very end for a significant amount of time. So his presence is definitely there throughout the show, but he's not like a huge emphasis. At least I didn't feel like he was. I think the Inquisitors were more of an emphasis than he was in the
Oh,
middle of the
absolutely.
show. In the middle of the show, but he definitely has a vital role in the beginning and the end. I mean, he destroyed Ezra's lightsaber, so that means he's going to have to make a new one, and that's what's going to, push us towards the spoiler you saw on shopdisney.com.
Yeah, I remember when I saw that other lightsaber and I was like, Jeremy, there's spoilers. I didn't know his lightsaber was gonna break because this clearly looks nothing like the lightsaber I know him to be using right now. What is going on? But it was one of those things of you just gotta wait and find out.
Yep. And I really hope they make a legacy lightsaber of his season one, season two lightsaber. That would be super dope. I mean, all you really have to do is model it after like one of those staple
Like a
thingy.
staple gun?
Yeah, kind of. It not the motorized one, but the one that's used to like staple things to the wall or whatever
Still a
for
staple gun.
school. Still considered a staple gun?
I believe so.
Oh. Well, it looks basically like that, and then, you know, make the rest of it happen.
One of the neat things that I liked being able to see was Hondo and his character development. Hondo is a character that I have seen in Disney World. When can you explain his presence there? You'd be able to explain it better than I can.
He's part of the Smuggler's Run ride. I think he's the one you get the job from, and then you have to go and get the stuff that he wants you to get.
Yeah. So I couldn't remember exactly what ride, but I knew you would know, so thank you. So Hondo is somebody who I have seen before and I knew of his existence, but I hadn't really seen him in a show before. Um, and I don't remember exactly when he's introduced in this show, if it was season one or two. I believe it was two, but we see more of him in two, so that's why I'm bringing him up now. Uh, so he's almost kind of like a royal court jester, if you will. Like he's kind of like a bumbling idiot. Um,
Reminds me of Jack Sparrow.
yes. So there's some parts of him
He
that
is
are
a
really
pirate.
smart. What?
He is a pirate. He's a space pirate.
He is a space pirate. There's some parts of him that are really smart, but there's a lot of parts of him that are just so dumb, and I love it. It's just just I don't know, it's just fun.
Yeah, I wonder, I'm gonna look it up really quick. What was Hondo's first appearance?
I think it was in season two, but it might have been in season one. I can't quite remember.
The fourth episode of season two, Brothers of the Broken Horn. I think that was Rebels. Maybe it was a Clone Wars.
Brothers of the Broken Horn was episode six of this season. It's when
Okay, yep, he debuted in Rebels.
yeah, it's when he was, so that particular episode that you're talking about is when Ezra was supposed to stay at the ship with Chopper, and instead he responded to a distress call, and then that's how when he met Hondo.
Well, I didn't know if he was like to audiences, did he debut in Rebels or Clone Wars?
Oh, I gotcha.
My guess is that it was Rebels. It says that he debuts in that episode, but I don't know if that's a debut for Rebels or a debut for everything.
Well, this particular episode came out in November of 2015. So I don't know what episodes in Clone Wars he was in to know when that came out. While you're looking that up, I'm going to move on to another character that I enjoyed seeing, which was Princess Leia. So, not a new character to us, but a pretty cool cameo, and I enjoyed that her cameo was not wasted. I felt like she I suppose it could have been anybody that was bringing those ships. It didn't necessarily have to be Leia, but the way she carried herself, and it wasn't just a like, character walking by in the background. She actually had a fair amount to do in that episode. And I mean, she let Ezra shoot her and stun her with his blaster, so that's pretty cool. She is not afraid to. She's not afraid to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, I thought that was a well-earned episode. Like we got to see Leia, and it wasn't just, oh, it's Leia. It was actually her being, she was snippy at times. She was, take control of the situation type person, just like she was in the movies. So, yeah, I think they did her justice on that one. I found it on Hondo. It says Hondo first appeared in the Cartoon Network, the Clone Wars television episode Dooku Captured, which premiered on January 2nd of 2009. So I think Hondo was in the Clone Wars first, but this was his debut in Rebels. So
Gotcha. Well, that makes sense. And as somebody myself, who has never seen the Clone Wars yet, um, this would be the first time that I got to have this character introduced to me in the television world. So I thought it was neat.
yeah, not just the rides.
What was something that you enjoyed from this season?
Ooh, one last thing that I enjoyed. Um, Well, just like this first season, the music was fire again. Oh, I guess one other backstory that's not related to our main group, but we did get the backstory of the Grand Inquisitor, which was pretty cool. We learned that he was once a temple guard. He was once part of the Jedi Order, and then he switched. That we've heard that story a handful of times, but uh, it was kind of cool to get the background of the Grand Inquisitor.
Yeah, that was an instance where I wasn't fully understanding what was happening, but I at least was able to recognize that it was him. So this was being that it was also my first time seeing temple guards was this season. I didn't fully understand their role and if they're real or fictional because a lot of that stuff is like in your mind when you're in the temple. To be honest, I'm still not sure if that's real or not. Um,
Just wait, it's in Clone Wars.
okay.
That's like the staple of everything. Don't wait, it's in Clone Wars.
Just wait, you mean?
Yeah. All right, when we come back, we're gonna wrap things up and talk about some things maybe we forgot to mention before, and then send us off. So stick around. Have you ever wondered what it's like to grow up during the prequel era? Do you wonder what type of merchandise was around then? How different was it than it is now? Check out our videos on this channel where we talk about the merchandise of The Phantom Menace and the merchandise of Attack of the Clones. They are here on this channel. The Phantom Menace is my first video ever on YouTube, so there's a special place in my heart for that one, so please, if any, check that out. Now back to our show. Welcome back for our final segment here. We're going to talk about some things just to wrap up our thoughts on season 2 for Rebels. I said there's one thing I forgot to mention. I was just thinking about it, but it kind of slipped my mind. Is there anything that you want to kick us off with?
Oh, there's two things I want to talk about. One, I'm gonna two for it. I'm gonna put them together, all right? One is the epic lightsaber battles. There are tons of them sprinkled all throughout, but the specific one or set of them that I want to talk about is um the season finale, the two-part season finale. So the finale I thought was really cool. I know this isn't necessarily just stuff that we like right now, but it's still stuff that I didn't have time to mention earlier, so I'm mentioning it now. uh the lightsaber battles were cool, having three Inquisitors and then Ahsoka with her double lightsaber. Then you got Kanan and Ezra in there. Then at one point you had Darth Maul as part of the battle too. It was just epic. So the lightsaber battle portion I thought was really cool, and the internal struggle of Ezra with this Darth Maul character that he doesn't know is a Darth yet because he doesn't really know who he is. He just kind of looks like this, like at first he looks like a decrepit old man that might need help, and he doesn't really want to help him because he's not sure if he should trust him. And then he does trust him, but he shouldn't trust him, and then it comes back to bite him. And just the whole two episode finale, chef's kiss. I loved it.
Well, he's not technically a Darth anymore, so that's why
It,
that's why he's
yeah,
going by Maul.
I mean, he says that. I don't know what makes him a Darth. He's definitely still Sith-like.
Darth means you're part of the rule of two, like you're part of the Sith apprentice and Sith master combo.
Well, he was wanting Ezra to be his apprentice.
Right, but so the Sith are built on this rule of two, where there's one master and one apprentice. That doesn't mean that other people can't tap into the dark side or explore the dark side, because we've seen it many times in the movies where there's the master and the apprentice is trying to find somebody so that they can be the master, and then those two people can kill the actual leaders that they can rule, and then it's just like a rinse repeat motion that they always betray each other. And so that doesn't deter from the ability that Darth Maul has to like tap into the dark side. Clearly, we saw that he has force power still in season two. Um, but the title of Darth, I don't think he has that because he's not part of the rule of two. I could be wrong, I suppose.
I mean, he introduced himself as Maul. He didn't introduce himself as Darth. I thought that was more because he was just trying to trick Ezra into trusting him, even though I'm not sure if Ezra knows what Darth means yet, other than Darth Vader. Uh, but I mean, those two episodes are called Twilight of the Apprentice. And he mentioned to Ahsoka when she said that Ezra was up there, he goes, "You mean my apprentice?" Because he's trying to make Ezra his apprentice, which would be a set of two. So,
But they aren't the set of two, is what I'm saying.
oh, yeah, I suppose, because there's still Darth Vader and whoever his apprentice would be at that time. I don't know who that would be.
Let's say I'm trying to look it up to see, and someone had asked, "Why is Count Dooku not a Darth?" Well, he actually is. He just goes by a different name.
Interesting. I did not know that.
He's Darth Tyrannus.
Oh, okay. I did know that. I just kind of forgot, I guess.
But keep on going. You're all right.
I didn't really have much more to say other than I really liked the season finale and all the lightsaber battles. I thought they were really neat to watch. Did you remember the thing that you forgot? Or is there anything else that you'd like to mention?
Let's say I'm trying to get the answer to this question really quick.
Oh, about if he's a Darth or not in this episode?
Do you remember what we just said a second ago about the Clone Wars? Don't worry, it'll be explained in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
That's basically what I just read, and so I stopped reading. they said in the Clone Wars this happens. It says no, like he is not a Darth, and then it says in the Clone Wars, blah blah blah, and then I stopped reading so that I can rewatch that and get the knowledge again when I watch it again.
Well, I mean, he does say that he used to be a Sith. He isn't anymore because the Sith have taken away everything from him. So I guess that would maybe explain why he's not a Darth from this season, like in context to what we know from right now.
Hmm. One side note that you might find interesting, we'll see if you do or not. You remember when we played our Star Wars RPG and I had Star Killer as part of the campaign?
Of course.
Do you remember that I played a clip where it was actually him talking?
Uh, Briefly.
It was like the nightmare scene that I created for it. But anyways,
Yep.
Star Killer, the actor, is also Darth Maul.
Oh,
And he's also the Emperor in the animated shows. So that this one person plays all like three of these characters.
weird. No, I did not know that.
When there's gonna be a
Is Star Killer in anything but the video games?
no,
Oh, okay.
well, he's in the books that are based off the video games, but that doesn't count,
But not as a voice actor.
right? But there is a somewhat iconic thing that happens, I believe, in season 3 of Rebels, um, where I'm gonna show you the clip where he actually recorded what happens in the show because he got really bad sore throat from some of his Darth Maul stuff. That's pretty interesting. Um, but yeah, fun little facts that he plays more than just Star Killer. I really hope that someday he does come back and he becomes canon, but something tells me he won't. With the way that Disney is really pushing Star Wars, which is kind of getting a little sickening, not gonna lie. Um, I don't see it ever happening. So I don't
How'd you feel
remember,
about
huh?
I was gonna say, how'd you feel about the creatures in this season?
Oh, so that kind of reminds me of what I was gonna say in a way.
All
Uh,
right.
what I was gonna say was this season of Rebels expands a lot of Star Wars lore. It's really cool. Like the space whales, right? That's something that was new, I believe, in this season for all of Star Wars. I think this is where that debuted. And so they expanded it with that. Uh, there's definitely a couple other things, but the whales is like the number one thing I gravitate to. So not only just expanding on the character backstories, but also expanding on Star Wars lore in general. I think we saw a whale like eat somebody. That was pretty nuts.
We did. It was I don't know his name, but he was like the head captain of that fuel station or that base.
Oh yeah. Yep. Uh
He's a very interesting looking character.
you briefly got to see space whales in The Mandalorian. You probably didn't know what they were when you saw them, just because we saw them like in hyperspace and they were like floating on the side while Mando was on cruise control. But it's kind of cool here that you now get to actually see what they look like.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I think they put space whales in Lego Star Wars, but I can't remember.
Another creature that was, and I don't know the answer to that. Just side note, not trying to ignore you. Sorry. Uh, the spiders.
Oh yeah,
That was another thing that we had kind of seen in Mandalorian. Not saying it was necessarily the same species, but the same type of spider, kind of. Like I think they were on different planets, but same concept or similar concept. Um, but neat to see them here. And again, I recognize this came out before The Mandalorian, but I saw it in Mandalorian first before seeing it here.
Well,
So
thing is too is the person that was responsible for Rebels is also working, I believe, with Jon Favreau on The Mandalorian, being Dave Filoni. So, uh, rightfully so, he can borrow from his own materials and expand on it. That's fine.
yeah. I feel like they were different enough too. The spider content, um, it wasn't like a they didn't have the same story element with the spiders. Like this one, the spiders use the web to like stick the ship to the ground, whereas before, it was the spider eggs that were a big issue, and we didn't really deal with spider eggs in this one. We just dealt with spiders, and so it was different.
Yeah, and Grogu was like trying to eat it.
Yep.
Weirdo. I think that's probably going to wrap it up for us today on Star Wars Rebels Season 2.
I give it 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, it was a great like it didn't have a sophomore slump. That's what was really cool about it. Actually, in my opinion, I think it went up, which was a uh nice thing to experience. You know, you're always wondering, excuse me, you're always wondering after something is, really cool to start out with, how are they going to follow it up? And I think by bringing in Darth Vader, maybe that helped them a little bit because they were like 100% original in the first season, bringing in the Inquisitors. I'm pretty sure that this show was the one that started the Inquisitor thing. And so I think that was kind of a cool starting point. Season 2, they brought in Vader. Maybe that's what helped it. And the way season 2 ends and is going towards season 3, there's another big character that's going to be, going along the way, being Darth Maul.
Well,
So,
something's got to happen now that Kanan's blind.
yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out too. It's just, they kind of showed it. This was really interesting in the show. We'll kind of end on this note, I suppose. When Kanan went blind and Darth Maul went to basically kill him and put him out of his misery, the show, and maybe it was easier for us to hear because we have a surround sound system, but the show basically heightened the volume. So like you were Kanan and you're hearing what Darth Maul was doing. So like when he stepped, it was louder and you can kind of almost feel like you were in Kanan's shoes with your. I don't think his hearing would heighten like astronomically within those 10 minutes or whatever it was. But when you are blind, your other senses do heighten. So it was kind of cool that the way that they edited the sound effects and whatnot, they made it feel like you were experiencing what Kanan was going through. So I thought that was pretty neat. Yeah, so we covered season 2 at the end of this month, and then we are going to go ahead and watch season 3 and hopefully cover that by the end of next month.
Oh, we will.
And then with the way that Sarah is wanting to watch this show more and more and more, we'll probably finish this before Ahsoka comes out, which would be really nice because I'm pretty sure season 4 has something that might play a pretty big role in the new Ahsoka show, and we both need to see it. We both need to understand it. So we'll get there. Especially with it being 15 episodes, we can get that done a lot faster. All right, if you enjoy this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We do Shoot the Sheev every week, and we have a lot of plans moving forward to keep it going. So if you enjoyed this type of podcast, make sure to do that. Drop us a like if you like it, and drop us a comment letting us know your thoughts on Star Wars Rebels Season 2. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.